Hey guys, welcome back to How to Roll Dice. I'm Josh, and I just wanted to do a quick little daily dive today on my replacement copies of the Iron Kingdom's Requiem books from Privateer Press. Initially, I was very upset with the quality of the books when they showed up, as I'm sure many people were, because they did have quite a few issues with the rollout, with damaged books and damaged, materials. But I did eventually decide, it's my money. They're making the offer. It's worth getting replacement books, even if I'm never going to use them. So I reached out to them and I said, hey, it looks like I got damaged copies of the core rules and the Monsternomicon. Could I please get replacements? They said, sure thing. I got them within like a week and a half, so that's good customer service. I just don't like the idea that we had to get to this point, and I actually had to ask for replacement copies, as did many, many other people. You can tell this by going to their Kickstarter and looking at the responses that people have been providing on the quality of their materials that they received. But anyways, I got the replacement copies. They do look to be in much better condition. I still don't love the lay flat binding that they chose to go with. I've never had any other RPG rulebook or any other book go with this kind of binding. It's designed so that when you have the book open, you can actually lay it flat on a table without it damaging the binding or the boarding inside the binding or the stitching on the pages or the glue or anything like that. Frankly, I know how to handle books, and I feel like people that have invested into a library of fairly expensive RPG books know how to handle books. You don't ever really want to open a hard boarded binding or stitch pages more than 90%, or 90 degrees, I should say. So like this is about 90 degrees. That's sort of how you hold your books. You can read this page, you can read that page, you can hold it a little further from your face and read both pages. You can flip through pages like this. That's perfectly fine. We're not, apothecaries with massive leather-bound books spread across a table in front of us. Frankly, if I tried to open a handful of, rule books behind my DM screen and laid them flat, they would take up too much space anyways. You generally keep your books folded, closed off to the side, and then you crack them open sometimes, with little page markers or ribbons or little, post-it notes, stickies, so you know what you're opening to. You read what you have to read, you close it, you put it back off to the side, and you'll maybe have a stack of books waiting over there as quick reference material if you need it throughout the course of your game, or if you need to hand a player book over to a player so that they can reference something, But nobody's really complaining about not being able to open a book and lay it flat. That's not how you're ever meant to handle books. You shouldn't even handle your personal books like that. Books aren't really meant to be opened that broadly, that widely. They never really were. Especially if you're dealing with rare antique books. You never want to crack them all the way open like that. That's just not good. You want to hold that sort of 90-degree angle, and that's the max. But anyways, I've got these. I've read through how to play the game with these sort of updated mechanics, these almost homebrewed house rule mechanics that bolt onto the 5th edition rules for Dungeons and Dragons. I don't like the way it's done. I don't think I'm ever going to play it. I would actually almost rather just play Dungeons and Dragons and make up some of my own rules to make it feel slightly more like Iron Kingdoms than to go through the tedious effort of figuring out how to merge the rules from this with the rules from the player's handbook that you kind of also have to have, and you also need a Dungeon Master's Guide, because these don't really teach you how to run the game. This gives you what's different. It doesn't give you everything. So you still need the player's manual, or the player's handbook, you still need the Dungeon Master's Guide. So now you're talking another $100, another $80 in books that you have to stack on top of these books to be able to play the game. And that's not what I'm looking for in an RPG. When I look for an RPG, I want something that is self-contained, fully functional, and fully immersive. If it takes a little effort to make it come to life on the table, that's fine. That's what I'm good at, and hopefully my players are good at it too. If not, I can kind of teach them. But as far as what the book needs to supply, it needs to supply the full rule set, all of the mechanics, and a good bit of lore, at least enough to give you sort of a jumping off point. Now, there are some RPGs that don't do that last bit, like Fate Core, for example, which I love. I have a copy floating around here somewhere, but it's a very, small blue book. You can actually get the entire rule set for free from the publishers of the game, because the point of the game is here's a mechanic set that can be applied to any setting with any type of characters. It's just the foundation of a game mechanically, so that you can play any type of RPG that you want with these sort of base rules. And that's a great thing if you love world building and developing your own plot and story and background and systems and races and societies, all of that. If you love doing that, Fate Core is a great rule set. You can memorize the whole rule set after one read-through, after half a read-through. You can play with dice on your phone. It uses Fate dice or Fudge dice, which are dice that are six-sided but don't have numbers on them. They have 2 pluses, 2 minuses, and 2 blank sides. It's a very easy-to-learn system. It's a very role-playing driven system because you're not relying heavily as much on the rules because the rules are basic. The rules are just meant to be a launching point for you to embellish the game as much as you want, or as little as you want. So a system needs to at least, supply a full rule set and hopefully a little lore, unless it's something like Fate where all of the lore is meant to be of your own creation, which is a specific thing. And if that's what you're looking for, it's great. If it's not, you play something else. D&D generally takes 3 books to play the game. You need a monster manual, you need your player handbook, and you need your dungeon master's guide. You can generally find those 3 books bound together with a player screen for somewhere around $100, $120, and that's like acceptable, but I still hate the fact that I need 3 separate rule books to run the game. I wish it was all one. With this, just to start the game, you're looking at 4 rule books, maybe 5 rule books if you want to add in the regular monster manual for 5th edition to add in some extra stuff, or just to pull up some extra rules for baser NPC enemies like assassins or fighters or things like that. So that's a bit much. Like 5 to get going is a lot. Also, I forgot to mention, I did get some other stuff that came with the books that just showed up later in a separate package. They showed up like 2 weeks later on your own. So I've got the spell deck. That's all the spell cards for the various spells that you can cast in the game, sort of the custom spells. Again, a very weird kind of mishmash system of how they added the Iron Kingdom spells into the D&D universe or mechanic system, but then kept a bunch of the D&D spells because they're necessary for the way that classes are established. It's really, it's not good. I don't like it. Maybe some people will like it. I don't love it. We've got some Mechanica cards here, this little Mechanica deck. Cool, no problem there. And then you've got some various monster enemy cards, very basic, very just, square cut cardstock. They're fine, but they're, I'm not going to jump out of my chair over it. And then lastly, I got some dungeon tiles. Again, nothing crazy over the top, just sort of your basic cardstock. They're fine. But I'm not going to play the game because it's ridiculous. I wanted to give a couple examples here. First off, when I said earlier in my last couple videos that I'm going to look at this game as sort of the last publication or the last novel of the end of a run, like an author's final work or the final car to roll off the assembly line of a factory, I think was my initial analogy. That's exactly how I'm thinking of it, right? This is a thing that I wanted because I had a feeling it was kind of the end and it was going to be the last thing I wanted based off of the run of the last few products that have been released from this company that I've loved for many years. And now that I've actually gotten it and I've gotten to look through it and sort of fully comprehend what it is, that's exactly what it is. And I'm still kind of glad that I got it. I'm glad at least that I got the proper editions that aren't going to fall apart anytime I want to look at them because I can use them as a reference and I have them. I have them to say that I have them. It's the same reason that I backed and purchased this instantly, as soon as it came out. The Art of Privateer Press. It doesn't really have any value, to people that aren't a fan of the game. They're not going to sit in my living room and look through this and go, oh, wow, amazing, But it's a setting and a world and a company and a game that I love. And so I wanted to back it and I wanted to have this so that I can flip through it and, go through a little bit of nostalgia or something like that. And I feel like that's exactly what this game is going to end up doing for me. The other thing that I wanted to show you just quickly, because this is an RPG that I'm actually excited to get back to playing, that I was excited from the get-go to look at, and that I've only fallen more in love with as I've read through it multiple times, and I've mentioned it, is the Alien RPG. And this is a great example of what I'm talking about when I say I like self-contained RPG systems that are done in a way that make them at least minimally bulky. Like some games are complex. This game here, Alien the role-playing game, and you can see I've tabbed the hell out of it, right? This is a complex system. This is far more complex than Dungeons & Dragons or Iron Kingdoms, or I would argue Iron Kingdoms and, Dungeons & Dragons merged, although that's complicated for a different reason. It's complicated because it's muddy and just poorly done, in my opinion. No offense to the people that made the game. I love the effort that you put into it. I just feel like going about it this way is a bad idea, and I'm willing to bet that the people that I like that are no longer with Privateer Press didn't want to do it this way. But this is what they decided to do, and I don't like how it's done. It feels sloppy, and it feels like puzzle pieces that don't mash together correctly. It feels like you're just trying to jam them together, and everything's warping and bending, and what you're left with is this distorted image of what you were supposed to have. This game, on the other hand, this is the one book that you need. This is the whole game. This is the Dungeon Master's Guide, or the Game Master's Guide, Mother, as you're referred to in this mechanic system, the player's manual, character creation, tons of lore, spanning well beyond anything that any of the movies or graphic novels or comic books have to offer. This is all of it right here. This is everything. And it's a dense book, but it's not insanely dense. You know, I want to say it's something like 350 pages, 380 pages when you factor in all the additional character sheets and forms in the back that they give you that you can make copies of. And this is a spectacular game. It's complex. It's, you know, rich in lore. It's fully inclusive. Like, it doesn't leave anything out like, oh, later we'll be adding these races, or later we'll be adding these classes or careers or weapons systems. It's all in here. And it's, again, even beyond what's offered in typical games like this. This has vehicles, this has starships, this has entire like stellar systems that you can visit with how to create your own stellar systems and planets and ecosystems and weather patterns. That's all in here in this book. That's well done. That's how an RPG should be. Now, I will say beyond this, I have purchased one of the first sort of expansion modules that came out, which is an equally large book, specifically expanding the information and the lore and the mechanics for playing Colonial Marines. I don't even have any characters right now that are playing Colonial Marines or veterans or anything like that, because we chose to go with a different kind of story that we're playing through. You can go a Marine-driven story where you're playing as sort of a specific unit or a battalion or part of a battalion of Marines going on the different types of missions and adventures that a group of Marines would go on throughout the setting. But that's not what we chose to do. I bought that book because I love the game so much, I just want as much of it as I can get. And I know that because I've read through the core book multiple times, I've played the game a handful of times, it kind of got shut down because of world events, but we're going to be getting back to it soon. And because I loved it so much, I wanted to get more of it. And so I was happy to spend $40, $50 more on the next book. And again, I also went out and bought the screen when I first bought the game, but you know, most people do that for any game. And it is helpful. I've added a few sheets to it, but it's a good screen. It's a good screen here too. But do you need both? You know, do you need like the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition screen and the Iron Kingdom's Requiem screen because they might not fully carry everything that you need to run the game from both sides? I don't know. Over here, the one screen does it. The one book does it. And it feels even more complete than all 4 or 5 of these and all of these cards and tiles combined. So not going to be playing this, going to be putting it on a shelf and looking at it fondly and wishing it was more than it was, but you know, remembering all that I love about it. And I will be playing games like this and like Fate and possibly Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder, whatever I come across. There's a handful of games that I want to try or get into or go back to. This just isn't it. So that's the final note on Iron Kingdom's Requiem. It's not what I wanted it to be. It was disappointing at first. It's slightly less disappointing now that I have functioning books, but it's still disappointing in the sense that I'm never going to play it and I'm not ever interested in giving it a try because it just doesn't feel good to me. It doesn't seem good to me. It doesn't seem like it would even work. But yeah. Hope you guys are having a good day. I'm going to get working on the Godspeed review tonight and throughout the course of the rest of the week, and we'll hopefully have it up for you midday to early evening Friday. But other than that, have a good one. I'll see you soon.